Are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Were the only words I desperately needed to hear the day I found myself standing atop the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, believing beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had not one other course of action to take, but to die by these two hands from lethal emotional pain. I believed I was useless. I felt I was worthless. I thought I had no value. I truly believed that everyone in my family thought I was their greatest burden. On all four of those accounts, I was terribly wrong, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I only saw pain. What is the one thing you want to happen when you find yourself in excruciating physical pain? What do you want that pain to do? You want it to stop, go away, or end. That's physical pain. I argue that brain pain is at the very least 300,000 times worse than any physical pain I've ever experienced in my life. And I promise you, and you'll know after this story, I have experienced extreme physical pain in my existence, in my short 39 years on this planet. But what led a 19-year-old young man to the Golden Gate Bridge, ready to take his life, believing he had no future? In order to tell that story, we have to stop here and go all the way back to the day I was born. August 30th, 1981, in the great city of San Francisco, in the beautiful state of California, born to biological parents Marcia Silvera and Martino Perales. Martino was half Mexican and half Italian, and Marcia was Arawak Indian, Portuguese, Jamaican, Scottish, Irish, English, Sephardic, Jew, and Black. And Martino and Marcia had two things going for them. They had their unconditional love for each other and that same love for their two infant boys, me, then named Giovanni Gabriel Prasad Perales, and my brother, Jordash. How he got one name and I got stuck with four, I'll never know. But they had us, and they had each other. But they had a great many things going against them. They had no feasible legal income. They had to hustle to survive. And to hustle to survive, they had to do, score, or sell drugs. They would leave me and my brother in seedy motels on barely a box spring for a mattress over concrete slab floors, the kind of place you paid for by the hour, and if you didn't, you were out. And they would leave us there, lying next to dangerous drug paraphernalia had we touched could have killed us. They'd leave us lying there. Had we fallen to the ground below, we could have died. Until one fateful day, one seedy motel clerk made just about his most unseedy decision. He heard our screams and our cries in his mind one too many times, and he did us the first solid anybody ever would. He called the police. And the police came in with Child Protective Services, and they swooped us up, and they placed us into the system, the foster care system, a system that was in shambles, a system that allowed kids to age out into homelessness without a penny in their pockets, a system that allowed other kids to be abused and neglected by the very foster parents set to protect them. A system, for all the good it does in this country, still allows for both of those things to occur on a regular basis. My brother and I bounced around from home to home. The idea is that me and my brother Jordash would be adopted together. But do you think that's what happened? Not by a long shot. We both got a vicious strain of bronchitis, and my only full-blooded brother died. Now, people have said to me quite callously so, as an adult, Kevin, why does that matter? You were an infant. How did that affect you? Well, if you don't know, the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are the most crucial for their ability to connect, adapt, attach, and be well in any future. And if the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are filled with nothing but consistent trauma, at some point something's got to give, and they're going to have a hell of a hard time. That time came for me at 17 and a half, when on stage in front of 1,200 people, I had a complete mental breakdown. My brain broke. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back again. Back to being adopted by Patrick and Deborah Hines. I bounced around from home to home after my brother died. I landed in the home of Peter and Deborah Muller. Peter was in the Army, as they do often has to be restationed, and Debbie was a housewife. And Peter and Debbie Muller were a transitional home for kids. That meant that many kids funneled in and out of their house at the same time, and foster parents from all over the area would come over and see who they were going to take home and adopt. And one fateful and wonderful day, a lovely young woman named Deborah Joan Hines walked in their door. Debbie Hines walked in their door, fully expecting to take home a little girl. She was looking for a little girl to be the sister of Elizabeth Catherine, the girl she and Patrick Kevin Hines had already taken in. They wanted to give Elizabeth a sister. Do I look like a sister to you? The first thing Debbie saw on the carpeted floor before her when she walked into the Muller's home was then red-headed, wavy-haired Giovanni with my famous red rubber ducky overalls. In her journal, she said that was the moment she fell in love, and that's how I know this part of the story. She went home to Pat Hines. He said, let's do this. Let's take him in. Why? Because he needs us. And they took me in at 9 months of age. But there was a problem. I was violently ill all day, every day, sick as a dog. Doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, no one could tell Pat and Deborah what was wrong with their new-to-be son. Until one specialist came forward and said, Pat, Debbie, there's nothing physically wrong with this child. It's all emotional, 9 months of age. Now, we all know that wasn't exactly the case. You see, my biological parents, for the first few months of my formative months, have been feeding me what they could steal. My first diet consisted of Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk. Horrible. My gut to brain health was very, very poor. I was very sick from the very beginning. But being in the Hines home, in the first 30 days, neither Debbie or I slept soundly because of my sickness. They literally had $1 million workup on me and no one could tell them what was wrong. On the 30th day of being in the Hines home, Debbie came to my crib, she leaned in, and she said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. But if you don't knock this off, we're going to have to give you back, which is a complete contradiction. But that was the first night in 30 days that we both slept soundly, as if my infant mind had fully heard and understood her words. She says she came to my crib the next morning, leaned in. She says, I opened my eyes, looked up at her, and I smiled. And she says it was a moment to be had. Clearly, it was just gas. But nonetheless, one thing was abundantly clear. I was home, and I was a Hines. Growing up in the Hines household was a beautiful thing. We wanted for nothing, we needed for nothing. Pat and Debbie Hines worked tirelessly to get everything they ever earned the hard way. Debbie Hines would end up being a 49-year nurse in San Francisco, having every nursing position you can think of. She would even be the mental health nurse of San Francisco for some time in the city department. She's an amazing human being and a gifted woman and the most optimistic woman you could ever imagine. And Pat Hines would be one of the most prominent San Francisco bankers of his time, retiring also at 49 years. And he would have had a really hard life growing up. His parents, just like my birth parents, also had substance use disorder, but they had primary alcoholism. As a matter of fact, many of his family did as well. Of his aunts and uncles, there were 9, 2 were stillborn, 7 remained, 5 would die of liver cirrhosis, failure, alcoholism. Both of his parents would die of liver failure, cirrhosis, alcoholism at 49 and 54. He would be left with about $17 in his pocket to make his way in the world, and he would have to fight for everything he earned the hard way. He would put himself through college, and he would go on to become an economist and then a banker. Pat and Debbie Hines could have had natural-born children, but they opted to take in 3 kids from 3 separate families into one and make a melting pot of a family. Me, I'm mixed. My brother's black, my sister's white, parents are Irish and German. People were confused. Women would cross the street to talk to my mom when she was walking with us, and they would say, how did all of that happen? And that's when my mom would reply, oh, you know, different fathers, which was epic because it was true, but it made them run right back across the street. We dealt with people in restaurants that weren't kind to us because of what we looked like as a family. As a matter of fact, some people wouldn't allow us to eat at their restaurants. We got up, went somewhere else, ate something else. We were happy. We were filled with hope, joy, and unconditional love. Growing up in the Hines home was an absolute bliss. Sure, Pat and Debbie had their flaws, but they loved us and we loved them, and they are our mom and dad. Growing up, we ended up getting into high school, me and my sister at first. My brother was younger. And in high school, I really began to flourish. I began to become rather eclectic. I was in the theater department. I was a champion wrestler. My football team would eventually go to state. I was involved as much as I could with as many things as I could be. But during a theater show at 17 and a half in my junior year, on stage playing a character called Gatch in the show How to Succeed in Business, without really trying, my brain broke in front of 1,200 people. I had a complete paranoid delusion, and to be fair, I had been spiraling downward mentally for some time, but didn't know why, and my family didn't know what to do about it. We had never experienced this before. But on that stage, in front of 1,200 people, I began to believe that 1,200 people were going to simultaneously rise, rush the stage, and end my life. What would you do if you thought 1,200 people were simultaneously coming to kill you? I imagine you answered, run. I ran off that stage. I ran to the lobby. I was met there by Mr. John Fennell, and he sits me down in the theater treasurer's chair, which was very fitting because at the time I was the theater treasurer. The kid with no conceptual math skills, by the way. That was a bright idea. Nonetheless, he sits me down. First of all, let's talk about John Fennell, the theater director. John Fennell was a failed actor turned high school thespian director, but he was the best teacher any of us kids would ever have. And John Fennell was a great man. He was a tough SOB. He was hard to deal with, and he was difficult, but he was a great man and the best teacher we ever had. He was a mentor, a friend, a hero of mine, and like a second father figure. If you did anything other than what John Fennell told you to do on stage, he'd take his left thumb, he'd place it in the right corner pocket of his mouth, making a loud echoing popping sound throughout the entire theater, and he would say, Hines, he always called me Hines, he would say, Hines, that's the sound of your head coming out of your... Anyway, we won't get into that, that's not appropriate. But he would say that, and he would say it multiple times a day to me, because I was always messing up. But John meets me in the lobby, and he sits me down and says, Hines, can you please finish the performance? It's not even intermission yet. What are you doing? And I just babbled incoherent nonsense for the next 10 minutes. I couldn't make out 3 words in a row that made sense. John, of course, called my mom. And Debbie came to pick me up. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes as she gazed into mine. For I could see within them that she saw within mine the depths of insanity brewing inside them. Very soon thereafter, she took me to go see my first psychiatrist, Dr. J. Kevin Rist. This guy. Now, I think she only picked J. Kevin Rist because his name is J. Kevin and my name is J. Kevin, which is not how you pick a psychiatrist. They said Dr. Rist was one of the best in the field. His secretary, his apprentice, people we barely knew who talked about him. Dr. Rist is one of the best in the field. Dr. Rist himself would tell me every session. He would find somewhere in the session and say, you know, Kevin, I'm one of the best in the field. Yeah, Doc, you're also one of the most humble, you know. But anyway, Dr. Rist was a good dude. He cared about his patients, but Dr. Rist was in his own pain. Dr. Rist also, just like my biological parents, just like my dad Patrick's parents, had substance use disorder. Just like John Fennell had primary alcoholism, which I didn't talk about. Dr. Rist was on methamphetamines the entire time he treated me and his other patients. He would lose 9 of his patients in 1 year to suicide. Dr. Rist was in a world of pain, and he needed help, and he wasn't getting it. I have no ill will toward the man. He's in desperate need of help, and Dr. Rist and John Fennell would be the first 2 people that I truly grew to care about, one of them who I love dearly, who would take their life and die by suicide. Those are the first 2 suicides I would experience of 10 suicides in my life of people that were close to me. I've lost 10 people to death by suicide from lethal emotional pain. And that's 10 people too many. But those are stories we don't have time for. Seeing Dr. Rist prior to knowing he was on methamphetamines, for years, in fact, I ended up at 17 and a half to 18 on this rocky, tumultuous road of skyrocketing to manic euphoric natural highs. But once you go up, you must come down, come crashing down to the dark abysses of depression and pain. And I'd come down, and I would crash, and I would crash hard. And I began to become very aberrant and self-violent and angry and aggressive in my mother's home. And I started punching holes in all of her drywalls. And I was just so sick and so ill. So, in fact, that she removed the door to my room because I kept slamming it so often. I was just a difficult young man. But it wasn't because that was my natural reaction to things. I was so mentally unstable and so unwell, and I needed so much help, and I wasn't getting it. On my 18th birthday, after 120 holes punched in 120 walls in the house, my mom said, kick rocks and call your father. She said, you're not welcome here anymore. She was the most optimistic woman in the world, and she'd lost her optimism for me. And I totally understand it. I don't blame her at all. She had to do what she had to do. She had 2 other kids in her house to protect and keep safe. Not that I would ever hurt any of them, but she did seem scared. I went to live with my father, and I'll never forget that night on my birthday, my 18th birthday, closed on the porch in the rain, and my dad comes to pick me up, and I go to his house, and I'm a mess. And he doesn't know what to do with me. He's freaking out. And we end up in this tumultuous relationship where we're fighting tooth and nail every day, screaming matches, yelling matches you can't imagine. Police should have been called. Domestic issues in the house for sure. Yelling and screaming that just could echo through the halls of the 5 houses next to us, if you will. And I go from 18 to 19 on this skyrocketing into mania and falling into a depression every week. Every week I'm finding myself so depressed. I find myself at 19 thinking of suicide, thinking of ending my life. I absolutely believed that I was worthless. I would look in the mirror and I hated every fiber of my being. I would look in the mirror and it was as if the mirror was a second person looking back at me, yelling at me, screaming at me, whispering at me, horrible things, mean things, negative things. I started to have auditory and visual hallucinations because I have the diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, which means that I have the ups and the downs of bipolar disorder, the panic attacks and the anxiety attacks and the stress attacks, but I also have very severe visual and auditory hallucinations where I'm seeing and hearing things that nobody else can see or hear, but I'm believing them to be 100% real. But I'm not telling anybody about them because I fear their reaction. So I was seeing things like Death himself hover through my window with his staff and blade in his right bony arm, his scythe. He reached out his other bony hand, turned it upside down. His eyes would light to fire in his skull face as he would say, "Come home with me," night after night, Monday through Monday, but I never told anybody. You see, my new friends, I got really good at one thing: silencing my pain. If y'all are going to learn one thing from me today, and one thing alone, let it be this: never again silence your pain. Your pain is valid. Your pain is worthy of my time and others. And your pain matters simply because all of you do. When we silence our pain, it only bubbles and festers and gets bigger and louder. And it bursts in things like rage, aggression, violence, substance use disorder, suicidal thoughts, ideas, or actions. A pain shared is a pain halved. Remember that. When you recognize your true value, you can tell your truth inside your pain, so you never have to live it alone. At 19, I sat at my desk, I took out my notebook, I opened that notebook to a certain page, and I penned that note, my suicide note, to my mom and my dad, my brother and my sister, my best friend Jake Lewis at the time, and my girlfriend at the time. I wrote that note, and this is what it said: "Mom, I love you, but you're not always right. Dad, I love you, but stop bringing the office home. This isn't work. I said to my little brother Joseph, wanted you to be nothing more than the greatest DJ on the West Coast, should be a household name. I said to my best friend, you'll find another best friend, as if that's remotely how it works." I put that note in my shoulder bag by the door. At 6 in the morning, the next morning, I walked into my father's room and I startled him awake. He wore a breathing apparatus, a sleep apnea machine. He took it off. He said, "Kevin, what's wrong?" I said, "Nothing, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I love you." In my mind, it was for the very last time. He said, "Kevin, I love you too, but it's 6 in the morning. I don't have to be working until 9. Go back to bed." And he fell as soundly asleep as quickly as he had awoken, sounding like Darth Vader snoring. I walked around to the other side of the bed. I sat on the carpeted floor and I rocked my body back and forth in tears, begging myself to tell the one man who loved me the most in the world the truth. All the while, hearing voices in my head telling me I had to die and I had no option. At 6:30, I went back to my room. At 7 a.m., my father entered. He said, "Kevin, I'm very worried about you. I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today?" I said, "Sorry, Dad. I've got to be at City College today." He said, "Kev, we'll go to the beach. Kev, we'll go to the movies. Kev, we'll do whatever you want. I just feel like you need to be with me today." He tried his best with what he knew. But nobody taught Patrick Kevin Hines suicide prevention techniques. Nobody taught Patrick Hines that by asking the direct and blunt question, "Are you thinking of killing yourself? And have you made plans to take your life?" it actually gives people permission to speak on their pain. And statistically, more people will tell the truth than not. As a matter of fact, more people will tell the truth by asking, are you thinking of killing yourself, than are you thinking of suicide? That actual wording phrase really matters. But he didn't know that because nobody taught him that. So what happened next that day was not his fault. It was no one's fault. It wasn't even my fault. I knew not what I was doing. I wasn't selfish by going to the Golden Gate Bridge and jumping off. I was sick and I needed help, needed recovery, needed wellness. People who die by suicide are not selfish. As a matter of fact, they believe they're doing people a favor by dying. They believe that they are alleviating a stress of somebody else or their family, or that they're everyone's greatest burden. It's not because they want to die. It's because they believe they have to. Two categorically different things. On that day, I found myself on a bus getting out to the Golden Gate Bridge. I sat in the very back row in the middle seat looking out upon everyone, and I began to cry, softly, mildly, and then waterfalls flowing from my eyes, mucus dripping from my nose. Then I began to yell out at a crowded bus full of people, leave me alone, but I don't want to die. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you? And now, if they weren't before, 100 people are looking down the barrel of the bus at me, but saying absolutely nothing except for one man. The man to my left is saying to the man next to him, while pointing at me with his thumb and a smile on his face, what the hell's wrong with that kid? And that's what's wrong with some of society today. This innate human ability we have to see someone, anyone, in the greatest lethal emotional pain we've ever experienced, but feel nothing for them but fear of them and apathy toward them. That's his or her problem, but it ain't mine. I got things to do, people to see, and places to go. I formidably disagree with this notion. I believe if we are nothing else on this beautiful planet, we are at the very least supposed to be one thing together, our brothers and sisters' keeper. Are we not? We are not here for our personal betterment. We're not here to make a buck. We're here to give back to those we know, those we love, those we don't know from Adam, and yes, those we don't even like. What we're not here to do is hurt each other or damage each other with our words and our actions. The bus got to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot. Everybody deboarded. There I was, crying like a child, hoping and wishing and praying that one person would say to me, hey kid, are you okay? Is something wrong, or can I help you? I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. Those words I said in the beginning of this presentation. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Can I help you? I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. I couldn't tell my father that morning, but on this day I wanted to tell anybody on that bus. I was ambivalent. I wanted to live, but my brain was trying to kill me. Everyone gets off the bus. I'm sitting there crying. The driver turns to me and says, come on, kid, get off the bus. I got to go. I walked right up to him. He motioned for me to get off the bus. I walked down those 2 steps that felt like 2,000, walked across a 2-mile stretch of walkway that is the Golden Gate Bridge for 40 minutes crying like a child. Picked a particular light rail, leaned my body over the light rail, crying my tears to the waters below. Eventually, a woman approached me and smiling, I thought, this is it. This lady's going to save me. I don't have to die today. She smiled, pulled out a digital camera and said, will you take my picture? I couldn't believe it. How could she not see my pain? I took her picture several times. She walked away. I said, absolutely nobody cares. The furthest thing from the truth. Everybody cared. Every member of my family, every one of my friends, my acquaintances would have been there to rip me from that rail to safety because of how much they cared. My brain wasn't allowing me to care. My brain was trying to kill me as I desperately tried to cling to life. It was then that I ran forward and catapulted myself over the rail. But that's not the important part of this story. The millisecond my hands left that rail and my legs cleared it, it was an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. I fell 220 feet, 25 stories, nearing 95 miles per hour at the speed of terminal velocity. I hit that water like a ton of bricks. The impact reverberated through my legs and shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae. I missed severing my spinal cord that day by 2 millimeters. But a miracle happened that day. A sea lion came to my aid in the water and kept me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. Amazing. Phenomenal. I named him Herbert. He's my hero. This creature saved me when nobody else could. I got to the hospital. They did a 10.5-hour back surgery on me that replaced my shattered vertebrae with titanium. But the second saviors in this experience were the Coast Guard, who brought me to the ambulance that got me to that hospital. The Coast Guard officers saved my life in the water, and they were the first responders on scene to keep me safe. They put me in a neck brace, strapped me in from head to toe, and started asking questions. Kid, do you know what you just did? Yeah, I just jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Why? I don't know. I thought I had to die today is what I said. Guy leans in. He says, son, do you understand how many people we pull out of these waters that are already gone? I said, no, sir, and I don't want to know. He said, I'm going to tell you anyway. He said, young man, this unit alone has pulled out 26 dead bodies from these waters and one live one. You. That gave me a great deal of perspective. And it helped me understand what I could never, ever, ever do again. Attempt to take my life. I live with chronic and regular thoughts of ending my life, but I'll never die that way. Each and every time I become suicidal, I will beg and plead someone to keep me safe. Each and every time I'm suicidal today, with chronic thoughts of ending my life, I now say 4 simple but effective words. I need help now. And if the first person I turn to is unwilling to help me or unable, I'll turn to the next and the next and the next until I find someone willing to empathize with my pain. I have been at the airport and I have asked a TSA agent and told them I need help now and told them why. I missed my flight that day, almost got on the no-fly list, but they kept me safe and they got me to a safe place after that. I am self-aware with my diagnosis. I believe in myself, my ability to be well. I work tirelessly, in fact, to do so. I follow a 10-step regimen called the Art of Wellness to stabilize my brain, mind, behavioral, mental, spiritual, physical health, and well-being. I work so hard to be better brain well. And you can too. All of us can fight for our mental health because we all have mental health. It's not something that's unique to one of us or two of us. It's something that we all have to deal with every single day. Some of us have mental health diagnoses. Some of us have mental health conditions or challenges. Others just have mental health qualms. Either way, we all have to work toward better brain well-being. I've been given the gift of a second chance at life. I'm not going to squander that second chance at life eating potato chips, playing video games all day. I'm going to do that sometimes, just not every day. What I am going to do is travel the world pre-COVID, 320 days a year, sharing my story, giving back, sharing how people can fight the pain in spite of the pain, despite of the pain, to thrive today, one day at a time, to be here tomorrow and every day after that. You are valued, you are worthy, you matter, and you are intended to be here until your natural end. Suicide never has to be the solution to your problem because it is in fact the problem. You are a gift to this world. You are meant to be here. Think of all the children who never make it past the womb. My wife and I know that pain all too well. Our boy Jack Ryan lived 8 weeks and no more. But he wasn't intended to be here in physical form. You all are, for the simple fact I'm looking into your eyes through this lens. I know you're supposed to be here. My friends, be here tomorrow and every darn day after that. You're loved, you're valued. Stay. What you're about to see is what I call the Art of Wellness, a 10-step guide to better brain, mind, behavior, mental, physical, spiritual health, and well-being. Check it out. A lot of people have been asking me, what do I do to stay mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy and well while living with an extreme form of bipolar disorder? Well, let's get right into it. What's cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and this is another round of Ask Kev, where you, from the interwebs of the world, across all social media platforms, ask me questions and I answer them to the best of my ability. I have been getting question after question about what is my general routine to stay stable. But people have been asking me all over social media, Kevin, how do you stay mentally stable while living with such a severe form of bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features? Well, I'll tell you first of all, it's not easy. I work tirelessly for my better brain health. And during COVID, it's been even harder. But let me break down in this video the 10 steps I utilize to stay tip-top to the best of my ability. Let's get right into it. Number 1, therapy. Therapy is a key go-to for me. Now, I recognize that not everybody can access therapy. Not everyone can afford therapy. But therapy means what it means to you in your particular situation and your life's path. If you go ahead and you educate yourself as to music therapy and art therapy, something you can get books on and teach yourself, meditation therapy, you can be better mentally well. So therapy is different for every person. For me personally, I utilize talk therapy, art therapy, music therapy, blue wave lightbox technology therapy, and breathing therapy or breathwork therapy. Talk therapy is when you talk to a therapist. Now because of COVID, it's virtual. It's teletherapy rather, and I do that with my teletherapist on a regular basis. I have her on my Zoom calls or on my FaceTime or on Facebook phone call even. That's right, my therapist answers Facebook phone calls. And so I make sure I can see her, she can see me, the expression on my face, my demeanor, my overall well-being, she can tell right away because we worked together for so long. Let's talk about music therapy. Music therapy is amazing. It helps me sleep at night. I listen to music therapy 20 minutes before I go to bed. I used to be an insomniac. This helped change my life. Art therapy. Growing up, I sketched as a kid all my life. I sketched, I drew, mostly superheroes, some real life stuff, some backgrounds, some landscapes, but I really fell in love with it. And when I am feeling in a bad place, I get down, I get a sketch pad out, and I put pen or pencil to paper, and I get to work, and it makes me feel better because it's a release of pain. Now, when I'm doing breathwork therapy, that's resonance breathing. I'm inhaling 4 seconds through my nose, holding for 4 seconds, then exhaling 8 seconds through my lips, like pursed lips, like a whistle, but no sound. I do that 30 times in the morning before I do anything else, before I check my social medias, before I even turn on my phone, before I do anything. I am breathing and getting my mind and body to a calm so I can just cool off and know that this next day is beginning. I do breath work in the morning, in the afternoon before lunch, and right before dinner. I do them because it helps me stay to a cool, collected, and calm place. Resonance breathing does a few things. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. Don't do it if you already have low blood pressure. That's a key thing you must know. Disclaimer. It lowers your blood sugar. Yes, breath therapy lowers your blood sugar. So if you're tackling that right now and you're dealing with blood sugar issues, breathing can be a key way to help you balance your life. It also quells an adrenaline rush, panic attack, and anxiety attack. I do all of these things with breath therapy, and it's amazing. So let's go. We got therapy. That's the first step in my 10-step plan. Let's talk about the 3 E's right there. 3 E's. Education, exercise, and eating healthily. Or proper nutrition, rather. Eating proper nutrition is so crucial to your better brain health. Now, I will be blatantly honest with you. COVID hit me hard. I was put on a new medication. It decreased all the leptin in my body, making me feel ravenously hungry all the time. And I have gained quite a bit of weight during COVID, but as they say, who hasn't? I'm working it off right now. I'm working really, really hard to stabilize. You saw me sit down with my hoodie on, the sweat on my brow. I just got done with my 3rd workout of the day, and you might think, well, Kevin, that's excessive, but don't worry about it. It's not. I did a 23-minute light exercise this morning on the upper body. I did a 23-minute lower body exercise this afternoon, and I did a 20-minute full body exercise, 23-minute full body exercise this evening. I do that all hours before I go to sleep so I get a great night's sleep. It really helps me out. Triple workout day, just because I felt like it and I needed it today. It really helped me out. Helped me feel more mentally stable. Sanity over vanity. So yeah, I've gained some weight, but I'm getting back into shape and I'm getting back on track with my physical routine. But let's get back into the program. Therapy. Education, exercise, eating healthily. I exercise every day and have done so for the last 4 weeks. It's been something that has really kept me stable and feeling good and feeling energized and feeling mentally conscious and aware. I feel like I can get through the day a lot better when I exercise first thing in the morning and then again in the afternoon pre-lunch and then again in the evening pre-dinner. It really is something that helps shape my day. And let's talk about why. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood. And if you're taking care of your mood, you're taking care of your brain health, your brain well-being. 23 minutes, 12 hours of better mood. That's the category. But 23 minutes twice a day, 24 hours of better mood, 3 times a day, you do the math. So that's exercise. Let's talk about eating healthily. Now, during these COVID months, I went a little haywire and I was eating myself out of house and home with everything I could find and not necessarily the most healthy things, but I'm back on track with a good, clean, healthy diet. And let's be clear. Healthy is different for different people, and I want to be crystal clear that I'm eating foods that are non-inflammatory, once again, that don't inflame my system, that don't cause me puffiness in my face and bloat around the gut. Obviously, you can see that some of the remnants of that is still going on, but I'm working that out right now. So it's been really good getting back on a clean, nutritious diet. Next to that, let's talk about education. This is one of my favorites. Educating yourself and your family member about what you're going through. So I read every single bit of information I can find on bipolar disorder as soon as it comes out. Every bit of information on bipolar disorder that I can find through a Google alert on bipolar disorder, suicide prevention, mental health and well-being, wellness. I read it all. I devour it whole, and I take it, and if it's reputable and proven, I add it into my routine. That's where the music therapy came in, and the art therapy came in, and the resonance breathing therapy came in, and even the blue wave light box technology therapy came in. All those things came from me reading research papers and studies and things like that, and articles and the like, and blogs about how to stabilize mentally. Just educate yourself as much as you can, especially if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. So next to that, educating your family, your friends, your confidants, your colleagues about what you're going through? How can they be aware of what you're dealing with if you don't help them understand it first? So instead of being angry at people that don't get you, maybe give them a book like Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder by Julie A. Fast, or giving them a book like Bipolar for Dummies by Candida Fink and Joe Cranak. I got to be in their third edition of that book, and I was so thankful to do so. So definitely check that book out if you have bipolar disorder. I'm a Catholic. I have a Bible, but Bipolar for Dummies is my second Bible. I use it every day. It helps me stay stable. It helps me to understand myself and my inner turmoils and how my inner struggles and how I can defeat them one day at a time. Don't let your pain defeat you. Let it build you brick by brick from the ground up. Succeed beyond the pain. Thrive in spite of, despite of the pain. You can do this. I believe in you. Those are the 3 E's: exercise, eating healthy, education. So therapy, exercise, eating healthy, education. That's 4. Let's talk about 5. Coping strategies and mechanisms. Finding things in your life and your existence that help you help yourself heal. So things like grounding techniques and finding tools and really hobbies for yourself that are positive. Reduction of the negative aspects of your life, reducing the negative people in your life. Those are all coping strategies you can utilize. So that's therapy, education, exercise, eating healthy, coping mechanisms and strategies. Let's talk about refraining from drugs and alcohol. I don't use drugs. I don't drink any alcohol. I used to binge drink on the weekends until blackout. I did it a handful of times. I didn't do it every weekend, but I did it a handful of times. I got alcohol poisoning, and at 21 years of age, I got so drunk and I embarrassed myself so bad that I never touched alcohol again. I have not had alcohol since my 21st birthday. I'm very proud of that. I quit cold turkey. It was very hard. I don't recommend that way to do it for anybody, but drugs and alcohol, I know they're not easy to shake. I know substance use disorder is very real. I know that both my biological parents died of mental illness, but they died of drugs and alcohol as I'm adopted. And I know that people are torn up inside and they want to get healthy and they want to get help, but they're struggling with their addictions. I wish you all the best. I'm sending out my love, my good vibes to you. Please work tirelessly to defeat your addiction. You can do this. I believe in you. I know you got this. My birth parents sadly didn't make it. Let that be a lesson to you. You can survive the pain, get through it, and you can reduce the drugs and alcohol in your system to nil, and you can find programs and treatments that help you to defeat your addiction. I believe in you. So therapy, education, exercise, eating healthily, coping mechanisms and strategies, refraining from drugs and alcohol. That's 6 of the 10 steps. Let's get into it. Advocacy. Advocating for yourself and advocating for public policy or legislative advocacy. Self-advocacy looks like being honest about your pain, telling your truth to others, telling your therapist the truth instead of lying. You can't get forward in therapy unless you tell the truth. Lying in therapy only gets you down a dark path. So being honest in therapy is key of any kind. Advocating for yourself in the sense that if medications you happen to be put on are making you feel uneasy, tell the truth about that so you can get to different meds. Meds don't work well for everyone. I take meds that work well for me. I'm lucky that I found those meds. I'm lucky that they work well. I'm lucky I got to a better place because of them. But that's just a piece of the puzzle. This entire 10-step program is really everything that works together at the same time. Advocating for myself in therapy sessions, with doctors. I've had so many primary care physicians and physical doctors of all kinds tell me that I'm psychosomatic. And if you don't know what that means, it means they're blaming my fear of physical illness on my mental state. And they're saying that I'm basically fictitiously making up in my head. I remember vividly when I went into a pulmonary specialist's office and told him I was having a really hard time breathing, he told the doctor next door that I was psychosomatic and that it was all in my head. It turned out that I had some issues with my lungs that were very serious, and he didn't even take it seriously. So you have to deal with these things and that shame and that stigma and that discrimination and that marginalization because you have a diagnosis of mental illness. It really sucks. I've had many of those situations occur, actually. I was once having a grand mal seizure, and they said it was psychosomatic, which it wasn't. It was a devastating seizure that caused a great deal of pain to my system. Nonetheless, we move forward. So that's self-advocacy. Let's talk about legislative advocacy. Let me give you a prime example of legislative advocacy. My father, after the film The Bridge came out, if you haven't seen the film The Bridge by Eric Steele, check that out. The Bridge is about the deaths on the Golden Gate Bridge in 2006. And Eric Steele made this film about why there's no rail up on the bridge right now and why it hasn't happened. My father was so inspired by this, he founded the Bridge Rail Foundation with Dave Hull and Paul Muller. Dave Hull lost his daughter to the Golden Gate Bridge, tragically. Dave, thank you for being such a servant to to this country and the world in doing the work you do. And Paul Muller, thank you for your efforts and your hard work in changing the situation and making sure that we never stop fighting for this net to be raised at the Golden Gate Bridge. And thank you to my dad, Pat Hines, for pushing forth the fight. And thank you to Alexis Durat St. James for being the original funder for the Bridge Rail Foundation. You are an amazing human being and a gift to this world. And so the Bridge Rail Foundation fought for the better part of 14 to 16 years, including myself doing this work in legislative advocacy to raise the net at the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, guess what? It's going up right now. It's being built and it will be done by 2023. And as of 2023, not one more beautiful soul will ever again be lost to the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention around the world. It's amazing. So exciting. That's legislative advocacy. That's where you get a small group of like-minded people that make great change and can change the world. Let's move on. So we've got therapy, education, exercise, eating healthily, coping strategies and mechanisms. We've got refraining from drugs and alcohol. We've got advocacy. The next step I want to tell you about is meditation. Now, we all heard that meditation can benefit us and help keep us more mentally stable. Meditation is so crucial for the body to live in a present state of mind. Being here with you right now is the only place I want to be. I'm with you, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you through this lens, and it's like I can see into your soul. And I know some of you are going through a hard time. I want you to find meditation, the kind that works for you. Do your research. Transcendental meditation is great. There's a great many meditations that can work for you. I find that tm.org is one of the best resources for meditation that works for a lot of people around the world. I met Bob Roth, one of the founding members of Transcendental Meditation, a genius in his own right. He's a great man, a man I call friend, and I find that meditation helps you recognize your true value by recognizing your inner peace and finding a way to stay calm in the face of all this manic world that we live in. This world is filled with mania. It's filled with disruption. It's filled with too many influences, and it's filled, frankly, with too much stimulation. And sometimes you need to bring that all to a calm. And that's where that resonance breathing comes into play with the meditation alongside it. The Calm app is a wonderful app for meditation, so check that out. Not a sponsored post, by the way. Just love that app. And Headspace as well. Two great apps for meditation. I want to give you guys those resources because they're out there and they're meant to help you. And if you need someone to talk to and you're able to afford a therapist, BetterHelp is a great place for talk therapy. So is Talkspace. We don't want to discriminate. We want to collaborate, not compete. Let's let everything help everybody. How about that? So meditation. Let's talk about medication. That's my next step. Medication. Medication, as I said earlier, is not for everybody. It works really well for me, but it took me a long time to find the right kind for me. And when I say a long time, I mean one hell of a long time. It took me a long time to find the right meds for me, but I did, and I have, and I feel so much better with them now. The medication I take with 100% accuracy each and every day without fail, and I take it at the same time every day without fail, because it helps stabilize my system and keep me safe from myself when or if I become suicidal. I can take a PRN to make me calm down. All these things are very helpful. A PRN is like a rapid release medication that helps you in the moment of a panic attack or a stress attack or even a suicidal state of mind. So next to that, let's get right into step 10, the final step of the 10-step plan, the art of wellness. It's called the plan, your mental health emergency plan. Everybody has mental health, and thus everybody has to take care of it. And if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. So get right to it and get to work and build your plan. Your plan is basically, for me, it was a binder back in the day. A binder I handed to my 5 closest family members and friends, and they became my personal peer protectors, my personal protectors, as I call them. And they were the people that had my plan. They knew my doctor's information. They had a release form signed. HIPAA laws were usurped, meaning that they could talk to my doctor and ask them anything about my treatment, and my doctor had to tell them everything about my treatment to make sure I was physically safe. If I couldn't keep myself safe, they could keep me safe through the plan. They had my doctor's name, number, email, address, everything, and vice versa. And anytime I wasn't able to take care of myself, then these people came forward, and guided me to a safe place. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a quick version of The Art of Wellness, my 10-step guide to better brain health. I wanted to help you find hope. I wanted to help you find healing. And I wanted to help you be well and be here tomorrow and every single day after that. Be well, be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, empathetic, and non-judgmental to every single person you come into contact with, no matter their behavior toward you, because you never know what they're going through. You never know what they've been through. And be good to yourself. You belong here. You deserve this life until your natural end. Suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is the problem. I believe in you. This life is the greatest gift we've ever been given or will ever be given. Guys, be well. and be here tomorrow.
With the great reckoning happening in America about male behavior and men in general, it leads to a question: what is male mental health, and what can we as a profession of mental health clinicians do to promote better male mental health? I'm Dr. Drew Ramsey, reporting for Medscape Psychiatry. I'm an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at Columbia University. In my clinical practice, I see a lot of men, and I guess I found that somewhat surprising in early practice, as we often think about the therapeutic room as a place where we see more women. After all, the statistics tell us women get depressed twice as much as men. But maybe one of the reasons we're seeing such a disturbing accounting of male behavior is that we haven't focused on male mental health at all. After all, think about it. We have women's mental health centers at every major academic institution in America, but there's not a single male mental health center that I could find. And this is very concerning when you look at the ways that men dominate some mental health statistics. Like, of the 40,000 suicides in America, roughly 78% were white male. So maybe part of the reason, and part of our solution for what's happening with men in America is our lack of a focus on their unique mental health challenges. So often we think about development as something that just happens in adolescence, but my own experience as a man and my experience of my patients tells me quite otherwise, as I'm sure you see with your patients. The challenges in the 20s of finding your identity, and the 30s and 40s of managing a profession, and for many of us, fatherhood, the 50s and 60s as we face our own parents' aging and demise and look back on our record of what we've done with our lives. These are all challenges that really deserve our attention and a conversation for men to better understand themselves. As I thought about what constitutes male mental health, my concern also was, how can men assess their mental health, and how can we help them access care? And to do this, I created a little scale looking at several aspects of what interferes with male mental health. For example, substance abuse. The lifetime prevalence of a substance use disorder in men is quite high, I think about 40%. Thinking about things that often go untreated, like depression in men, often because it presents a little differently. Men are oftentimes a little bit more irritable and kind of angrier, and have more insomnia, for example. And my concern is we have a notion that men don't really present to mental health clinicians, and men maybe don't have mental health problems. It discourages treatment, or it does the thing that we often do, is we don't encourage people to get treatment in a preventative way. It's one of the things about psychiatrists that's interesting, is so many of us have been in psychotherapy to understand ourselves, our emotional world, and our work. I think the more that we can sort of spread the news of what we have to offer, and the more that we can help men access treatment, my hope that psychiatrists in our profession can help with overall male behavior and how we relate to one another and to women. I'm Dr. Drew Ramsey. Please check out this issue of Men's Health, where I go into some detail about how men can rate themselves or think about their mental health. And I'm really curious in the comments below to hear how you consider male mental health in your practice, what unique aspects there are to it, and most importantly, what you feel we can do to help men understand themselves and their behavior.
What is crackin', Hope Nation? It is your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and welcome to the My Brother's Keeper podcast. Our guest today was born in jail to an incarcerated mother. Lorenzo Lewis struggled with depression, anxiety, and anger throughout his youth, to the point of being at risk for reentering the system. From this, Lorenzo grew the Confess Project, an initiative that confronts the stigma around mental health for men of color. Lorenzo's project takes a two-sided approach, researching the issues with the individual and within society. Lorenzo's life story and his life's work give him a unique perspective on behavioral health and the social science issues surrounding Black male identity.
I also realized that when we were canvassing the ground, I heard so many stories of people that was losing hope, that was felt unheard, unseen, not celebrated. And so I think everything that's arisen, through the George Floyd, through the COVID-19, the loss of jobs, the loss of, individuals having to social distance and having to step away, has really now, I think, again, it's something that I always saw, that if we didn't figure out a way to really support young Black men, our communities, our more marginal communities, right, that we would this will become a major crisis. And so we also realize that 1 in 5 Americans will be affected with a mental illness, regardless of their skin color. But more particularly, talk about the marginal communities, minority communities that are less advantaged, that have less access, and that also experience systemic racism. You got to think about a more of a compound dynamic of low quality and just a decreased lifespan. And so, what we are planning, what I see as the state of mental health at this point is, we still have a lot of work to do, but we are in a much better place than where we were before because people are starting to listen. To get barbers to engage into this training is something that's not easy, especially when you're talking about men who probably didn't have a father around, had issues with gang involvement, may have been incarcerated. I mean, the barbering field in a lot of cases are the last career route for some of these men. Some of these guys are coming at, this is one of the fields that some of these guys can go into, they can get released from prison and come and go to barber school and become a barber and be able to make, a pretty good, decent way to take care of their families. So to know that we're attracting probably some of the most hard to reach men to engage is really powerful, right? And so, but I think that gives me hope to know that our mental health system, our state of mental health, I feel really good about where it's going, because if we're able to attract this group there, I can just imagine where we can go in the years to come and how things will continue to improve.
I don't believe there is anything wrong with men having suicidal thoughts. But is there something wrong with how we react to suicide being thought about? Let me explain. We'll all die at one point or another, right? Our bodies will fail us and we'll die of disease or old age, or we'll have our lives taken from us, maybe in a tragic accident. So, isn't it perfectly normal to consider being in control of our own death? Yes, suicide is intentional, but does that automatically make it wrong? I believe suicide is preventable, and I believe we should do everything in our power to prevent it. But I also believe there's nothing inherently wrong in thinking about our own death. I've considered what it's like to die. I'd like to ask you all to close your eyes just for a minute. I promise nothing scary will happen if you close your eyes. Now raise your hands if you've ever had a really bad day that's left you feeling maybe stressed or upset. Okay. Keep your eyes closed and keep your hands raised if that bad day or bad week or bad month has ever led you to think about harming yourself or taking your own life. Thank you. Put your hands down and then open your eyes. That was about half of this room. I invite you to consider what might be different if we didn't see having suicidal thoughts as wrong, and what that might mean for the men in our lives thinking of suicide. Let's go back to my Uncle Richard. For most of his life, he experienced what was most likely bipolar, and he had suicidal thoughts on more than one occasion. In fact, 6 years before his death, he attempted to take his life. The sad fact was that Richard lived in a time where suicide wasn't considered something that you spoke about. It was swept under the carpet and a cause of shame amongst families. There was something wrong with it. I mean, it was only in 1961 that we stopped making suicide a crime. Richard's parents were medics, an anaesthetist and a nurse, and they didn't understand suicide either. They didn't think that it was real, and I think they were probably in denial about what was happening with Richard. What happened to my uncle isn't my grandparents' fault. Suicide is complex and rarely attributed to any one factor. But when I reflect on Richard's experience and on how we still struggle to speak about suicide today, nothing's really changed. We still struggle to talk about it. We label it as abnormal or unusual, and we make men wrong for having suicidal thoughts. We say that they're unwell or that they need to get better. And because we think of it this way, it stops us from being able to talk about it, and we stay silent instead. And suicide remains shrouded in this stigma. That stigma is only perpetuated by irresponsible and sensationalized journalism that happens in the cases of celebrity suicide. Just look at some of the reporting around Anthony Bourdain's recent death. When I was thinking about how best to explain this point, it made me think about sex and sex education. Stick with me, okay? It's really uncomfortable for us to talk to kids about sex. It's so tempting to think, if we don't talk about it, it won't happen, our kids won't have sex. But we know that teenage pregnancy and STIs are the risk if we don't have that conversation. And we take those risks seriously. We introduce sex education into schools, and it's now compulsory across the UK. And I mean, it's far from perfect. But what it has been shown to do is to improve positive attitudes towards safe sex, to delay sex, and to reduce teenage pregnancy when used alongside other methods.
And that dynamic correlates with men's mental health decreasing as men get older. Like middle-aged men have the fewest and least deep friendships of any subsection of our population. And who's killing themselves? Middle-aged men. You know, like it's a vital nutrient to our lives to have friendships and connections. And I think you're right. That's a great question about, or a great point about the group nature of it, right? You know, like it's that team. We do programs with Army Special Forces guys, and we have an integration program where we bring Special Forces vets in with civilians and run programming. It's freaking amazing. But, you know, one thing to note is it's a generalization, but a lot of people in our culture would consider Navy SEALs, Special Forces, Green Berets, these guys as sort of the pinnacle of manliness. They live 24 hours a day in teams of men. It's like they are so connected to each other. They live a cooperative life in a way. And so I think that's something that just kind of gets missed in our, you know, it's not just these individual men, like just doing the one man thing. It's not, you know, I mean, I don't want to make any, what I want to say is we weren't programmed that way. We didn't evolve that way. For example, I was in media for a while, and I was part of a group of guys that flew around the world and around the country and the world, and went out in the wilderness and hunted animals and filmed it. And it was like a modern day version of a you know, community's hunting party that went out. And there's just something so freaking awesome about it, you know. Like a group of guys is a really I don't know, it's really important for men's mental health and their overall wellness. So what would you picture in terms of hostility? Would you picture in terms of like bashing women, or like what would you,
I guess you could say, yeah, bashing women. You could catcalling, because you don't catcall by your, sometimes people do, but I guess oftentimes catcalling is a product of like appearing cool in front of your guys.
So my initial thought on that is that type of behavior is a defensive surface mechanism that isn't like the heart of the matter. It isn't truly what men are actually feeling. That's like a mask that is put on to look cool, to gain some sort of rank or some sort of, you know, perspective from other people. And that, so it comes down to intention, right? Yeah, of course you could get a group of guys together and go drink beer and you know, what would they talk about? Like maybe football and their sexual exploitations and things like that, which is, I'm not even going to demonize that. I mean, whatever, it's not necessarily all bad, but with the intention of getting together to just be honest, right? Let's just call it that, to be truthful. You're going to go right through that stuff. And if a guy, you know, is kind of hung up on something, you're going to go right through it, down deeper into what's actually happening. And there may be real anger there. And so that's great. So we create a space where, yeah, let your anger out, like actually be angry. Because that's one of the things I think is actually happening, is that real, true, deep anger, we don't have anywhere in our life to express it. And so as it's suppressed and down there, it comes out in these ways where we just backbite our partners, or maybe we do, it comes out in some gross feelings toward women or toward whatever, you know. And so it's just this like uncomfortable leaking of stinky energy, you know. But when you can get down into it and say, oh yeah, let it out, man, get it out, like let it, like, you know, because feelings and experiences and emotions, they don't go away. They don't dissipate. You know, you can't suppress things down and keep adding to them and just expect that they're just going to like dissolve, disappear. It doesn't work that way. So I started doing this working with adolescents, right? Mm-hmm. And these adolescents were really struggling and hurting and causing harm to their families. And it was just like, I couldn't help but think, like, why? What's going on here? Like, these are amazing. Like, I would get out there, I'd connect with these kids and be like, God, you're amazing. Like, you're an amazing human. You're a kid. Like, I think like you're awesome. And it just sort of naturally started to see. So like parents would come for parent weeks, or dads would come out. I'd lead a trip with boys and their dads. And it was just like, oh, like, not on purpose, but our inability to get through our own spills onto our children, spills onto our wives. Like, I think that men's willful or subconscious ignoring of our own repressed emotion, trauma, feeling, stress, suffering is a huge cause of harm in our world on many different scales, right? So like rape, suicide, like being the dark, scary, intense, violent ones. But then even just like a father who has a hard time really being present for his kid. Like, imagine that's kind of like the blanket.
The Movember Foundation put out a candid video encouraging men to open up.
My name is Kathy Castle, and I represent part of our training collaborative here, and I work for Channel Marker. Kevin is on here right now. Kevin Hines is part of our panel tonight, and you learn a lot about him when you're watching the video already. Some of you may be returning, have seen some of our other 6 in the series, but I'm very excited to introduce Kevin. He has devoted his entire life to his adult life to spreading his message of hope and healing and recovery. And he works 24/7 at it, believe me, trying to help other people and making fast friends with about everybody he knows. And we really are thankful for him in joining us in Maryland with trying to do some suicide education and prevention. And I'm also going to introduce our other speaker, Pete Smith. And Pete, well, we can turn the camera on. Pete is, he actually was a presenter in our last panel for veterans. So we've gotten Pete to come back. He was so awesome. He gets to get the second turn on the panel. And him and Kevin had a really good working panel last time. So we have him back. But Pete currently serves as the military and veterans liaison for Anne Arundel County and as comptroller for the Department of Defense. Previously, he served as county councilman for that district. Pete has served in the United States Marine Corps for 22 years with 13 years active duty and is an intelligence officer for the Marine Corps Reserves. Pete is a member of the Military Order of World Wars, the American Society of Military Comptrollers, Toastmasters International, and the Marine Corps Association. He also serves as the Anne Arundel County Coordinator for Toys for Tots. So Pete, and I know Pete just got off a plane from Chicago not too long ago, so he's doing double duty here. And Kevin's got a hard stop at 7, so I'm going to get right into the panel so we have some good time for the people that are on the webinar. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Great to see you again. And thank you, Pete, and hi, Sandy, and to everyone involved, everyone on today. Small, intimate group, but that's fantastic. It's a good way that way. We touched the topic of male and men's mental health and suicide prevention. As a 39-year-old male myself, living with bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features, as a person who developed the disease as a young man in his adolescence at 17 and a half. It's been quite a journey to deal with such a disorder and to try to fight it and to try to overcome it and defeat it every time it arises. I was just telling Kathy on text had a bad couple of mental health days last 2 days. Just down in a rut, bit of a depression, and these things happen. And I want to be really forthright with them and honest about it because it's a part of the narrative. I had a really good week, had a really good last month mentally, and just got to a place where I came up on a not a manic high, but up on a high level, and then I came crashing down into a bit of a depression and a low. And these things are going to happen, and in order for me to defeat them as a young man, I have to talk about them. I have to be honest and open and real and true about my struggles so I can keep moving forward. It's not always easy to talk about them. It's often I feel like I don't want to burden people with my troubles, but I have to remember that talking about it, a pain shared is a pain halved. That's my line. I have to live by that. So I'd love to open it up to talk to you, Pete, and talk about what you thought of the video and what you think of men's mental health, and just kind of have you broach the topic and share some of your experience with your own mental health over the last many years.
No, thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity to be on here and share this stage with you again, brother. You got a team of supporters here, and I'm definitely one of them. So if you ever need me to do anything or just to be there to shoot the crap or whatever, let me know. We can go do some push-ups or something like that. I got you. I definitely work out. I will tell you that. I definitely work out. So, no, men's health. So for me, this is what men's health is. I want to show you something real quick. Look. This is my son, Tristan, right here, right?
Hi, Tristan.
And I got to tell you, there is, and I have a daughter as well. She's eating some cereal. There is nothing more important to me than making sure that I stay healthy and vibrant, because I know that these two require me to be 100% committed. I got to tell you, when I went through a divorce, it was emotionally tough. I had, me and my ex-wife, we co-parent well, but it was one of those periods of my life that was really, really dark, and I didn't plan on it to happen. It just kind of like came out of nowhere. But I guess people grow apart. But growing up, I also struggled with it because, I didn't grow up with a father, and so, my stepfather came into my life later on, and it was so weird because my stepfather had 2 kids that he never raised. He married my mother, who had 5 kids, and he never had any contact with his own 2 kids, one which bore his name as a junior. And so it was always like one of those interesting sort of dynamics. And I think part of my upbringing when it came to mental health and just trying to stay focused was looking at all the bad things that happened in my life. And it was, I can't compare to yours. I would give you that one. But it was a lot for a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old. I'm 40. Well, I just turned 41. And so, we probably grew up in the same generation. Watched Thundercats growing up. You and I know you did. I know you did, buddy. So, it's one of those things where I just think that it's okay for us as men to have points in our life where we need help and not be afraid to go to someone and ask them for help. And so for me, watching your series and speaking about this from a mental health standpoint, because we can't always be like the lion of the jungle. Sometimes we got to take a vacation. We need a break. And I think the most powerful example I think that was given to me here recently over the last probably 15 years ago was I've been in the Marines for the last 23 years, but there was a sergeant major who had said to me that, if I didn't have that the firing pin within this, and I hate to use that even analogy, but it was so appropriate for the Marine, and because we dealt with folks who were contemplating suicide. In fact, a couple of years ago, we lost somebody to suicidal ideation, and they sort of, went the distance with it. And I think for me, the most important piece is to ensure that no matter what I go through, right, and no matter what struggles that I encounter personally, there are other people that need me to be here. And from a mental health standpoint, focusing on being the best version of myself is something that I always strive to be. And I'm not perfect. I've certainly made mistakes before. But at the end of the day, I took my personal situation where I didn't know my father, and And for me, I told this graduating class a couple of years ago that I learned everything about being a man and a father from a guy I never knew. Everything he was, I was going to be the opposite. That's what I learned from him. I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to be a husband. I didn't know how to, but I knew what I didn't want. Right? I knew what not to be, right? And so sometimes we can learn from what not to do with the people that we encounter in our lives. But fortunately for me, I also had 3 strong mentors in my life. One was a police officer and then 2 teachers. So those 3 amigos, I like to call them, literally made me who I am because I felt like they gave me someone to be. It gave me someone to model after at these critical ages in my life when I needed them to be there. One when I was like 12 years old, and the other was in my teenage years. And so it's okay for us to sort of need a break sometime. And that's what I like about your program is because you recognize that and you're speaking the truth.
Yeah, and in the video we saw the 2 podcasters were talking about how to interact around women, wives, significant others, children, and he was saying that even just a father's inability to conversate or emote with their child can have a severe impact on the rest of their lives and the way they treat other people. And so you didn't have that dad growing up, and that made you want to be, as you got older, it made you want to be a great father, a better father, a good influence on your children, and especially I'm sure your son. Can you talk about what it's like to raise a son in today's day and age, and how you incorporate a mental health aspect in raising your son?
Well, I think part of it is always here's what's crazy. I don't think in my 18 years before I went to the military, me growing up in my household, obviously I didn't have my father wasn't there, but neither from my stepfather or my mother. Now, as I mentioned, I didn't mention earlier today, but my mom was 19 years old with 5 kids, right? Not one time in those first 18 years of my life did my mother ever say to me, "Hey, I love you," or my stepfather, or any other man, quite frankly, up until I got Mr. Armistead was my first teacher, and I felt it from him, right? And so one of the things that I've taken from my childhood is like it's such a simple word, and sometimes you like, okay, what does it mean when you say that? But I make sure that my kids know, both my daughter and my son, that I truly love them, right? Because I think it's important for them to see the sacrifices and the willingness that I have, and this helps me keep my sort of mental health in check. For me, is to teach him the values and to show him. Kids may not listen to you, at least in my mind, but they will mirror you. They may mirror you, and so I'm an anomaly. Like I got 3 sisters and 1 brother. My brother, and I'll back up some. My brother, he went to prison for 7 years. He had 10 year sentences for armed robbery. My little sister was on probation. There's me. This sister went to prison for 2 years for mail fraud, and then this sister was on probation, right? And so I don't know how the hell I made it out of that environment that allowed that sort of kept me out of trouble and where I am today. But what I can tell you is, if it wasn't for some of the men that were in my life, like Mr. Armistead, like Officer Richardson, Mr. Sanders, those 3 men specifically, I would not be here today because I think they gave me a model to mirror in order to be successful. And I try to take those things that they taught me and pass them on to my own son.
Can you talk more about the specifics? Can you get into something that each of them taught you that you take with you and you've taken with you until now?
Yes. So I always feel like Officer Richardson. So I actually posted about this on Facebook literally yesterday because I was in Chicago, and she's right. My plane landed like an hour ago. So I was like in my car driving here while I was on the Zoom with the camera on because I'm like, I gotta get to the house. I don't want to. I was hoping the airport was not going to delay the flight because I was like, I was going to call you from the airport if I had to. But so Mr. Sanders, Officer Richardson, who was the first person to interact with me because he arrested me when I was 12 years old for trespassing. Me and this other kid, we were I don't think we were going to do anything nefarious. We were just being 12-year-olds. And so somebody called the police and they wound up arresting. But this dude became like a super mentor for me because he told my mom, or he told me that he wouldn't tell my mom that we got arrested if I came back up to the police station every day after school. So what did I do? Because I didn't want to get a whooping. I came back to that police station to be with him. But the crazy part is I've developed this relationship with him. And I wound up learning these traits. I learned how to swim, which is where I became a lifeguard afterwards. And then I joined the military right after that. But if I had not went to the police station, because the police station had a swimming pool at it, I got free swim lessons at the police station. So I learned, and I joined the swim team. So that skill literally came because of the interaction that I had with Officer Richardson. So I always feel like he gave me my sort of purpose in life. Mr. Armistead gave me my Mr. Sanders gave me my voice. He was my speech coach. So he was the one that sort of was always on me about, hey, Pete, you got to communicate more effectively. Hey, you got another Pete in your life, right? Wasn't it? You said a Pete earlier. Look, you got these Pete's that are just coming out of the woodwork with you. So Mr. Sanders gave me my voice, and so Mr. Officer Richardson gave me my purpose. Mr. Sanders gave me my voice, and Mr. Armistead gave me my passion. Like he's the one that literally he was 17 years old when he graduated from college. He was a chess master, and this dude was like super smart. He was like a 27-year-old, 28-year-old teacher when I first met him at 14 or 15. And for some reason, I fell in love with this dude. Like I'm like, man, I wish that was my dad, right? And so he gave me the purpose that I feel like I exist for. So my passion. So my purpose, my passion, and my voice all came from those three men.
And when did you learn that your mental health was key to your survival and your well-being? That taking care of your as a man, that taking care of your mental health was crucial.
I mean, I have to tell you, it didn't come until later in my 20s. I mentioned it before that one time I had when I was like 11 or 12, and that same building that I posted about on Facebook, where I got arrested, was the same building that I put the belt around my neck, and because I was frustrated with my mom, and I pulled on the belt to try to like make myself go unconscious. That means there was a lot of history in that building. So I couldn't sit here and tell you that when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, that I knew the technical aspects of mental health. I will tell you that when I got into my 20s and I started to look back and analyze my upbringing, that there were a lot of things that went wrong that I did not want to happen when my kids were born. So I would say when I was 25 and I found out my daughter was, that my ex-wife was pregnant with my daughter, was when it really hit me, and that I needed to really focus on building a solid relationship with my spouse, working hard so that they can have the things they need to be successful, so that they didn't live like I lived, because I hated the way that I lived. Like I moved every year from like first grade to like 8th grade. Most people don't even know that my senior year in high school, I didn't even live in a home. Like we lost our home, the house that she was renting, my mom. So for about a week, we had to find another place to live. So my sisters and siblings, they all split up, went to different houses, and I wound up living with my aunt in like this literally 9x3 little room is what she had in the basement my senior year. So it was so embarrassing. So it was tough dating because I didn't have a place. I mean, I felt like I was homeless because I literally, my mom didn't have a home, and so we were like searching around trying to find something. I wound up going into the military so that I didn't have to live there anymore. That's how I got away. I went into the military. And so, that year, my senior was really, really tough. And so I would say when my daughter was born was really when I started to focus on having accurate reflection and things that inspired me to stay healthy, because I wanted my kid to have a life that I didn't have.
Did you ever deal with bouts of depression and mental pain? Can you talk about that?
I did. I mean, as early as 12, when I put that belt around my neck and thought that it was going to like just end it, right? When I was going through my divorce, and here it is, I'm on the county council, and elected to this body, and I have to go to all these different events, But yeah, I got to put on this fake. I felt like I was this fake person in front of everybody, quite frankly. And so I would, in my mind, I felt like I had to, when I walked out the door, I would put on the mask. And so no one could like see past the mask, right? They would just see this and know that everything was all right. This dude was like eluded, sort of put together. But on the inside, everything was falling apart and no one even knew about it. And it was just like 2018 was a really rough year for me. And so, I was certainly depressed. And I remember calling my ex-wife because during that time period, I also not lost, but I had transitioned from my job to another job, but it took 5 months for that job to come in place. And I remember calling my ex-wife and, crying to her because, I had continued to pay all the bills that I would normally pay. And I didn't have my main source of income for like 5 months. And so my savings account is like going, just depleting. And now I'm getting to a point where I got like, I don't know, $17 in my checking account. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to pay my mortgage, my rent, and all these other bills in September 1st? And I'm telling you, it was brutal. And good thing we have a good relationship because we were able to get through that period. But it was very depressing, sort of knowing that I was in that situation. But it was similar to when in high school when we were moving around a lot. It was similar to when I was in 9 and 10-year-old, and every year I went to a different elementary school and middle school, which sucked because I always had to find new friends. And so it's been like a struggle my entire life to just maintain. But again, that first thing I did when I jumped on it, I showed you a picture that I brought my son in here. That is my motivation for overcoming all of that. Because at the end of the day, my life means something. It means something to my daughter, and it means something to my son. And so for me, the biggest accomplishment and success that I will ever do is making sure that I'm here to always provide and make sure that they have a life that I didn't have.
That's really powerful, Pete. I can really appreciate all that. I guess my next question would be, where do you see yourself mentally 5 years from now? Where do you see your mental growth happening?
Well, it's I like some of the steps, like the music therapy. I sing. I'm not going to sing to you right now. I could woo you if you want me to, right? Look, Art Kemp, do a little voice to there for you. But the music therapy really helps me. The physical, as far as fitness therapy and all that, like the gym kind of has become. I broke my ankle when I was at OCS about 11, 12 years ago. And it's trying to get back to a position where I felt like I could physically be before that happened. It got me going to the gym a little bit more. And so that listening to some of your steps, I certainly understand how valuable they could be because in some kind of way, I kind of use them in my own methods and the music therapy, doing the fitness. You said you've gone every 4 weeks, or you've gone the last 4 weeks in the video. Hopefully you continue to do that because it's one of those things that, but I also have an opportunity to bond. There's like 2 other gentlemen that I wind up going to that will be at the gym when I'm there from time to time. And, they've kind of become like big brother. They're like in their late 50s. And I kind of look up to them. I'm inspired by them because their consistency to being in there. And excited about it. But I think in 5 years for me, I want to continue to build on my checklist sort of program things that allow me to grow as a dude and as a man, but also become, one of the things that I hope in 5 years or 10 years and 20 years happens to me is that my kids come back to me and say, you know what, Dad, we love you. And we're so glad you did everything you did to make us successful. So my 5 years is getting to a state in a stage in my life where I feel like that they can go and be super successful, and they look back and say, "Man, I'm glad you were my father," right? And so that's what I'm striving towards, and continue to build out my checklist of things that help me continue on from day to day.
And final question here, my friend, what do you say to your son about his mental health as a young boy turning into a man? What do you say? What would you say to him about taking care of his mental health?
I would say to him, and he's probably listening to me, so, because you know, these walls aren't too thick. I would definitely say to him that that um, that the world is unpredictable. It is like there are a lot of things that are going to happen to us, but I want you to always know that I'm there for you, right? That it doesn't matter what it is, what the topic is, I will always have his side. Um, and I want him to know that. I want him to feel that. I want him to believe that, so that as he grows and becomes the person he is destined to be, he knows that he has someone that he will always be able to come back to help him get through his life struggle, because he will encounter them, because we all do. We all have our struggles that we encounter. And so I just wanted to know that his dad will always be there.
Beautiful. Did we have any questions from the folks watching?
Yeah, we have quite a few women joining us tonight. So we did have a few questions from them. Are there any clear differences between men and women that we should be aware of, that any sort of sign that something is wrong, that maybe a woman wouldn't be as likely to display?
You know, that I don't actually know the answer to be fair.
Okay.
Fair and honest. I think that.
So,
what do you think, Pete?
Well, so I couldn't tell you a scientific sort of clinical sign, but what I will tell you, when I was growing up, at least from my own personal experience, I do feel like, and I felt like, there were some things I could go to my mom with, and there were some things that I could go to a man with, right? And at some point, my mom realized that something she couldn't help me with. She was like my father too. She literally filled both roles. But I think I got my identity from Mr. Armistead. I got my identity from Mr. Sanders, right? Like those, because when I looked at them, I saw me. I love my mom, but I got my identity from these two dudes that I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be that. I think that's what the world expects me to be. And so for those families that have encountered times or struggles where that's why I believe in mentors and stuff like that. And I'm mentoring a kid right now who just came down from Pennsylvania because when I tried to find my father, and I'll try to be brief for this, when I was 20 years old, I tried to visit him. And for the life of me, I just wanted to know what this dude looked like. I wanted to, am I going to be bald or what? I want to know, what does he look like at 60, which might mean what I'm looking. That was always that question that I had to answer. And for a long time, I always struggled with like reaching out to him, trying to find him. I mean, it never really happened. But at the end of the day, it was good that I found these mentors in my life, because I felt like they helped me overcome during periods when I really needed that version of me to be accessible and to know what it looks like. And so that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something that I did think about a lot when I was younger.
Thank you. And just one more question. So if you wanted to start a conversation with somebody, it can be difficult sometimes. Sometimes the only response that you'll get is, I'm fine. Is there any tips or anything that you could share to help open up the dialogue and get the conversation going?
I often, when I talk to folks that I think are in imminent danger of suicide or attempting or considering it, one of my go-tos is just to say, hey, I know I don't know you well, but I'm worried for you, and I was thinking about you, and I can tell you're going through something, and whatever you are going through, I want to ask you a direct, honest, and true couple of questions. I don't want to offend you, but I want to dig a little deeper than most people do, because I care. You're a human being, I'm a human being, and I care. And that's when I ask, are you contemplating taking your life or killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life, or do you have the means? And depending on those answers that you get, you plan accordingly to get them to safety. I really believe in asking the blunt, honest, and true questions, and being bold enough to do so, and not being afraid of that. Because in this line of work, and in my life experience, we've always gotten the person to safety, but only because we asked the questions. I have to head off the call, everyone. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for everyone being on today. Really appreciate you staying on and watching today and joining us. And thank you, Kathy, and everyone involved. And thank you, Pete, for being on the panel.
Kevin, before you go, I do want to jump in and just say thank you for sharing your story with us these last 7 sessions, but certainly today. I think it was very powerful to see both you and Pete and share what you're experiencing now and what you've experienced in the past. And just from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for all your work you're doing in this area and for the conversations that you were brave enough and vulnerable enough and strong enough to share with us tonight. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. That means the world. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye, guys.
So that's it for the questions.
Pete, I don't know if you had any final thoughts.
Men's health, and I think Kevin was alluding to this, or in his video with one of the medical doctors or psychiatrists that was discussing, we often put on this facade like we gotta be the strongest, we gotta be the fastest. I don't know if it's society that places it on us, or if it's just built into our DNA, and we're just supposed to be the aggressive, the providers, and all these things. And not saying anything is wrong with having those titles sort of levied on sort of being a man, right? I think the most important piece, though, is that when we are bringing up the next generation, is that we have these open conversations with them about who they are and their design, like what they're supposed to be doing with their life and their purpose. Because I think the sooner you have that sort of roadmap embedded in you, the easier it is to sort of exist. We will all, everyone on this freaking call, and everyone you have ever encountered in your entire life has gone through something, no matter they're male or females. Like, we have all gone through something. We all have a story that's important for someone else to hear. So what I would also say is don't be afraid to share or be vulnerable like Kevin has been. Share your story with other people, because someone can learn from that instance, and they can learn not to touch the stove and see that it's hot. When they see me screaming, they don't have to learn that same lesson. We should be building people, and they should be starting from on top of our shoulders, going to the next level. And that's what this life is about. That's what I feel like me as a man that I'm supposed to be doing with my own family, both my daughter and my son, is to show them what strong, grounded, ethical, sort of moral individuals are. And I will make mistakes, and I'm not always perfect, but they need to see that too. That when we fail or when we struggle and go through things, that we get back up and we start fighting to get back to a better place. And so that's what I would say.
And I'm reminded, Pete, from your story that the importance that other people make in our lives. So when we don't have necessarily what we were born into, and how you're paying it forward. So thank you for that reminder as well.
Appreciate it.
Well, I think we're done. I think we're done for the night. Thanks, Pete.
No, thank you. Thank you all.